Hello and welcome to the current affairs session from Mentora IAS. I am Safir and today we are going to take forward the journey of current affairs which we have started for you so that you can be figuring out the Herculean task of current affairs. So if till now you have not subscribed to our channel, please do that and keep on following all the videos that are coming in the sequence so that you can never miss out a video, and at the same time you are able to develop an in-depth understanding of what exactly are the events of current affairs. ठीक है, तो ये काम करना इसलिए इंपॉर्टेंट है सो दैट आपको पूरा का पूरा एक सीक्वेंस समझ में आता रहे करंट अफेयर्स का. कोई चीज़ छूट गई है सीरीज में पुराने वीडियोस देख लेना, एंड एट द सेम टाइम कभी इस चीज़ की चिंता मत करना कि तुम्हारे पास जो चीज़ें छूट गई हैं उसका तुमको कंपाइलेशन नहीं मिलेगा. वी आर गोइंग टू गिव यू अ मंथली कंपाइलेशन ऑफ ऑल द थिंग्स दैट बेसिकली आर बीइंग कवर्ड इन द वीडियोस थ्रू अ मंथली कंपाइलेशन सीरीज एज वेल एज अ टेलीग्राम PDF. ठीक है, तो टेलीग्राम चैनल को भी सब्सक्राइब कर लेना. Do subscribe to our Telegram channel as well, and subsequently let us begin with today's current affairs session. So in today's current affairs session we have got three broad topics to discuss. Okay, two of them predominantly come from polity and one of them comes from geography. Okay, so the topics that we are going to discuss today are basically going to be something on electoral roll. Okay, that how exactly the names can be corrected or updated in the electoral roll, what exactly is the procedure, how do you delete names from the electoral procedure. The second thing that we are going to discuss is basically the powers of the you can say the article 356 of the Constitution of India, that is the President's rule. And the last thing that we are going to discuss is basically a tropical cyclone named Ragasa. Because it was actually there in the South China Sea and the Pacific Ocean, it is called the super typhoon. So we are going to discuss these three. Okay, so stay tuned and at the same time आखिरी तक इस वीडियो में रहना, because you are going to get a lot of details and at the same time a lot of your questions are going to be answered as well. So as the video goes, you will basically be finding certain questions in before the topics are being presented, and subsequently you are expected to find out the answer to these questions. Okay, so let us begin with the very first one. We are going to talk about the way in which the electoral roll can be modified. So what exactly is electoral roll? Electoral roll is actually a list of those individuals who are eligible to cast their vote during an election. Okay, so that is basically an electoral roll. Okay, so with respect to the electoral roll, this is your first question, the elections to India. Okay, so I would request you to pause the video, read this question well and try answering the question. Okay, so you can pause the video now. Okay, now this is your next question. Pause the video now, read the question carefully and answer it. So how do you answer it? You basically are going to answer these two questions with respect to the comment box. Okay, so comment there what exactly is your answer. This is your third question, a bonus round for you. Okay, pause it now and you can get this done. Okay, now let's talk about it. Why exactly was this in news? Because recently the leader of opposition of Lok Sabha, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, again did a press conference on the mismanagement of the electoral roll by the Election Commission of India. So technically he was alleging some kind of misconduct with respect to the Election Commission of India, but at the same time he raised this particularly very important issue with respect to the largest democracy in the world, that there have been about 6,018, okay, about 6,018 voters whose names were deliberately being attempted to be deleted from the you can say the electoral roll of one of the constituencies of Karnataka, that is Anand. Okay, so that is basically the constituency. The spelling of that would be, okay, this is pretty less visible. Okay, this was the constituency in Kalaburgi district. Okay, and it is in Karnataka. So the leader of opposition Lok Sabha, okay, Mr. Rahul Gandhi has alleged that there have been deletion of about 6,018 voters' names from the voter list, and subsequently this was caught by mistake by both the Congress party while it was investigating the electoral roll, and at the same time the Election Commission of India as well. Okay, so now this is basically another storm that basically is heading towards the Election Commission of India, whose credibility is right now getting questioned by the various allegations that are being put forward by the Indian National Congress via the campaign of vote chori. Okay, the theft of the votes that is being done. Okay, so the leader of opposition actually has said that this was something which was done during the 2023 assembly elections of Karnataka. So assembly elections basically mean the elections with which you basically elect the members of legislative assembly of a country, of a state. Okay, so that was basically what was the news. So I have told you the allegation that there was a deliberate attempt of deleting the votes. Okay, so that is basically the primary allegation here. Now let's talk about how does this entire system of correction and deletion work. Okay, what exactly is the procedure here? So when we talk about the procedure, so the procedure basically talks about one particular act. So if you want to talk about the act, okay, the legal provision, so that will be the Representation of People Act. Okay, Representation of People Act, which is in short also written as RP Act 1950. Okay, this is also called as the RP Act, and that is how we are going to actually talk about it. Okay, now with respect to this, there is an act. Now this act is something which will be given by the parliament. So parliament basically gives a law based upon which the mechanism is supposed to be working. So there are two acts with the same name: Representation of People Act 1950, Representation of People Act 1951. Okay, but with respect to the way of making the electoral roll. Okay, so now let us also determine what exactly is electoral roll. So in the most common terms, electoral roll is nothing more than the voters list. Okay, so this voters list is something whose compilation, creation and management is vested with the Election Commission of India. Okay, so the power to create, maintain and update is with the Election Commission of India. Okay, for parliamentary elections and state legislative elections. Okay, so this power is with the Election Commission of India. Now this particular electoral rolls power has been given to the Election Commission of India by the Constitution. So it is the Constitution of India that actually gives the Election Commission of India this particular power. Okay, now in order to exercise this particular power, it is the Parliament of India that has given a particular act. I hope this is something which is clear. So I will give you a broad layout. One is Constitution. Okay, so Constitution basically what does it do? It empowers Election Commission of India, okay, to certain functions. What are the functions? We are going to discuss that as well. Okay, now in order to do these functions, what do you have to do? You will have to find some authority of law, you will need some backing of law, authority of law. Now the Constitution does not provide you with law, it basically provides you with powers. But in order to get the backing of the law, what do? This is something which will be actually made by Parliament of India. And the Parliament of India actually gave this particular power to the Election Commission via the Representation of People Act 1950. So in this particular act, we basically have the mechanism through which the electoral roll is going to be made. Okay, so it basically has one of the most important aspects of elections, and that is basically the qualification of becoming a voter. Qualification of becoming a voter. Okay, and that is the fundamental step in order to make this particular electoral roll. Okay, so in order to make this particular electoral roll, sometimes what also happens is that you would need specific kinds of rules in order for proper implementation. So this particular act first of all gave the authority that yes, this is something which is going to be considered as the eligibility for voter. Now how exactly are you going to you can say file your filling, for that matter how exactly the mechanism is going to work, that is something which is given by something called the electoral rules. Okay, so electoral rules of 1960, they are basically a set of detailed instructions on how exactly the voter list is to be managed, how exactly is it to be updated, how exactly it is to be you can say the voters need to be added or removed from this particular list. That is something which is given by the electoral rules of 1960. Okay, so based upon this particular rule, okay, there is a particular form which is called Form 7. There is a Form 7 under the elector rule of 1960. Now with respect to this particular form, what exactly is the situation? That with respect to this particular form, you could do two things. Okay, you could do two things. Propose inclusion of a name, object to the inclusion of a name. So technically what does this tell you? That Form 7 actually gives the powers to the voters. Okay, so Form 7 actually gives the power to the voters to object the wrongful inclusion of a name in the electoral roll. Okay, so this is something which is actually given to you by Form 7. Okay, but in order to do this particular thing, you will yourself need to be an elector. Okay, so what exactly are the limitations? Okay, Form 7 can be used only in the voter's own electoral constituency. Okay, so let us say that you basically belong to a particular constituency, whatever constituency you vote in. So constituency basically means the region where you actually go and cast your vote. Okay, so with respect to your own electoral constituency, what is going to happen? Only in that particular constituency can you have this particular Form 7 you can say filled up. Okay, so you can raise an objection only to an individual who is also as of now included in the voter list as a fellow voter in the same constituency. The second thing, the complainant, the one who is raising the complaint, must also be an elector. You cannot do this without being registered as a voter. Okay, whose name actually appears in this particular electoral list. Okay, then you can actually use this particular form. And what exactly are going to be the grounds of deletion? So if first of all you have actually come up with the objections. So if you have objected, on what grounds can you object? Okay, so what could be the grounds of objection? So when we talk about the grounds of objection, the very first ground can be, ineligible age. That you might be knowing that the person who is actually registered, whose name has been registered, is not yet 18 years old. Okay, so you may not be 18 years old, so less than 18 years old. That could be the first thing that you could be talking about. Okay, second thing could be not a citizen of India. Only citizens of India can vote for any of the elections in India. Okay, that's the next thing, not a citizen of India. Okay, The third thing after this, the next thing that we basically have is going to be duplication. That this particular individual may have another electoral, you can say another entry in the electoral roll somewhere else. So you have found that there may be a duplication. Okay. The fourth thing that may be there is basically that this particular person is no more an ordinary resident of this region, which basically means migration of the region. And finally, that could be death. So on these grounds, objections can be raised that someone may already have passed away, but still their name appears in the electoral roll, and someone may be impersonating the same person. So these are basically the grounds for objection. But another thing that we need to know is that when a particular person is applying for Form 7, okay, so the burden of proof, what exactly is the burden of proof? Who exactly is going to prove that this particular individual, whatever allegation or whatever objection do they have, what is the basis of this particular allegation? This burden of proof does not lie with the complainant. So the individual who is making the complaint or raising the objection, complainant, so he is the person who is making the objection. Okay, so I am writing it as objector. So this person who is making the complaint, this particular individual is not going to have any kind of responsibility of also producing material proof for his or her own objection. So you just have to go there and you have to submit this particular form, but at the same time you have to give an undertaking. Give an undertaking that the objection is basically on the best of your knowledge. Okay. So when you basically give this particular, you can say declaration. So when you give this particular undertaking, so then what happens is that you become liable for legal action or imprisonment in case of a frivolous complaint, in case of a false complaint or frivolous complaint. Okay. So that is the procedure that we basically have to follow. So when you are actually going for Form 7, so first of all you need to have your own electoral ID registered. So it means that you will need to have your own electoral photo identity card, EPIC card with yourself. Okay. Then first of all you are going to fill the details of yourself, and then subsequently the next thing you are going to actually do is you are going to object to the inclusion of a particular name based upon the fields that were mentioned. And subsequently if you have the details of the voter ID or the things that are actually there with this particular person, that is the portion that you have to fill up, but you do not have to submit any proof of why exactly are you saying this. Okay. So this is a very, very important thing that we need to understand. Now once this is done, that you have filed a particular form, what is happening next? So Form 7 may be filled online or offline. Online or offline. So when you fill it online, you fill it through ECI Net. This is basically a platform that we are going to study next. Okay. When you are going to do it offline, you have to hand over to the electoral registration officer, ERO. Okay. So this is basically the individual ERO. Now with respect to this particular ERO, now ERO is authorized under section 22 of the Representation of People Act 1950. Okay. So it is the electoral registration officer who is actually authorized under section 22 of the Representation of People Act to delete the names or modify the names from electoral roll. So now I think you are able to identify or and understand the beauty of things. Okay. So why exactly the rules were made? Rules were made so that the citizens may use this particular service to bring the attention of the authorities to the matter of wrongful inclusion of a name. Okay. So that is basically why the rules were made. After the rules were made, now what is to be done? You have to authorize a particular authority to try upon such things. So that particular thing is given by the Representation of People Act to the Electoral Registration Officer ERO. Okay. So what exactly is going to happen? The ERO receives the form, and after that what is to be done? A notice is sent to the person against whom the objection is made. Okay. Now give 7 days for response. Then conduct hearing, take action, and subsequently then what happens is that in this particular case the name may get deleted. Okay. Now in this entire procedure there was one thing that was missing, and this apparently triggered the particular allegation by the leader of opposition. And this particular you can say issue was that when you are actually filing form 7, okay, so you basically need not verify any mobile number. Okay, you did not need to verify any mobile number, that has to be mandatorily linked to the person who is filing this objection, and this apparently was the mechanism that was used. Now what happens is that when you do not have the mobile number which is owned by you, you are giving that particular number because you have the you may be operating this is something which may be due to you can say a fake SIM that is there. Okay, or for that matter you might be having someone else's mobile. Okay, now what happens, you basically give their mobile number and you are filing the objection on your own. So now what happens, when you are filing the objection on your own, you are giving someone else's mobile number. Now it will be very difficult to trace you. Okay, and this is exactly what the Indian National Congress and at the same time the Election Commission also said, that this may be the case, that because there was a drawback, that there was no way of verifying the phone number which was registered with form 7. So in that particular scenario what would happen, that you cannot track the original complainant via phone number. Okay, so that is why there are two things. One, there was no burden of proof. Okay, and the second, even the phone numbers were not verifiable, and that is basically how this particular vulnerability was exploited. That is the allegation. I hope now this is clear. Okay, now with respect to the allegation, what was said is that the Election Commission of India recently introduced the e-sign feature. Okay, so this is something which has been recently introduced by the Election Commission of India, ECI. Okay, so based upon this e-sign feature, to access any service, the Aadhaar linked phone number will have to be validated. So technically when you talk about it, so what exactly is happening? First of all, we have a link of Aadhaar with PAN, permanent account number. At the same time, we have the link of Aadhaar with our elector's photo identity card. Okay, So that is why when you actually use Aadhaar card's number, the number with which you have actually filed your Aadhaar application, so now what happens, this number is definitely associated with you because you will have to give an OTP. And that is the reason that Election Commission of India, after recognizing this fault, they introduced this very recently, the e-sign feature. So now in order to access any such services like Form 7, you will first of all need a valid phone number. And once you have the valid phone number, you can make a profile and then you can access things. Okay. So that is basically how this particular drawback was the one which was actually handled. I hope this is something which is clear. Now we talk about the ECI Net platform. So this is basically a platform which integrates 40 different services of the Election Commission of India. Okay, 40 different services. So these services were basically for the electors. Okay, this was basically for the electoral registration officers and other personnel. This was also having the services which are basically for the political parties as well. Okay. So all these services now have been completely integrated into a single platform called the ECI Net platform that has been developed by the Election Commission of India. So with respect to the electors, you might be knowing about the National Voter Service Portal, or you might be knowing about the Voter Helpline. Okay, so these are basically all the kinds of applications now which have been merged together with the ECI Net platform, and now it is also available as an app for both Android as well as iOS devices. Okay, so desktop, iOS and Android, all the three ways you can access the ECI Net platform. So technically this was basically the platform that you would be using in order to register a new voter, or basically fill out the form for a new voter. Okay, update your you can say address, you can be applying for changing of your constituency. All these things were basically being done through the NVSP or voter help. Now they are actually being integrated into the ECI Net platform. So this platform now acts as the central processing agency for all the requests that actually go to the Election Commission of India with respect to registration of voters, electoral roll process, and subsequently the guidelines for other personnel as well. Okay, so that is basically the ECI Net platform. So with respect to the ECI Net platform in this particular case, so this was basically where the application can be filed. Okay, application will be filed through this particular thing. It will be filed here, and after it has been filed here, now it is going to be forwarded to the electoral roll of registration officer. Okay, so now the electoral registration officer is basically going to then also make the booth level officer, also called as BLO, to conduct a field visit. So subsequently what is going to happen, you are going to physically verify the existence of a particular individual or the facts that have been presented. Okay, then subsequently what is going to happen, the field visit report is going to be forwarded to the electoral roll registration officer. Then this particular thing is going to be used as a notice. Okay, then a notice will be issued, and after the notice will be issued, then basically what is going to happen, the individual against whom an objection has been raised, they will be given a chance to you can say counter the claims. Okay, so that is basically the role of ECI Net through this particular case. Okay, now what exactly are the grounds for removal of a name? So now what exactly would be the grounds for the electoral registration officer? So for ERO, there have been limited grounds. Okay, the first one again would be that you are basically not a citizen of India. Okay, then underage, you are not 18 years old right yet. Okay, then death, then permanent migration. These are basically going to be the grounds on which the name of a particular individual is going to be struck off from the electoral roll. So if any of these is basically proved, okay, then this is something which is going to be done. Okay, so that is basically the grounds for removal of the thing. So I have already told you what exactly is the procedure with respect to the ERO to investigate such a case. Okay, now let's talk about the Election Commission of India. So Election Commission of India basically is a constitutional body, meaning that this is a body which has been mentioned in the Constitution of India. Okay, why exactly is this particular body called a constitutional body? Because the Constitution of India, okay, when you talk about the Constitution of India, it basically has got a very important vision. Okay, so when we talk about the vision of the Constitution of India, so that is basically that India will be a sovereign, democratic republic. Okay, so this is basically what was the objective of the Constitution of India when it was originally enforced in 1950. You can find this in the preamble. Okay, after that what has happened, we have added two more terms to it. What exactly are the terms? You tell me. Okay, so sovereign democratic republic was basically the objective of the Constitution of India of how the Indian state is going to be politically. So subsequently when you talk about sovereign, so when you talk about this particular quality, sovereign basically means supreme authority over a territory. So any kind of law that is to be made, that will be made by this particular authority. So this particular territory, just a moment. So when we talk about this particular thing, sovereign territory, so here basically what is going to happen is that we are going to find that with respect to India, this particular sovereignty rests with the people. So people as of now are sovereign. There is no other authority which is sovereign. And when people are sovereign, that is why we have the next word, that is democratic. That basically means it is basically the wish of people, that will be the kind of government we have. So it will be a government that will actually be elected by the people of India. Okay, so elected by people of India, and this particular government is basically going to be the part of representative democracy. So it basically means that the people of India are actually going to elect their representatives. So the people of India are going to exercise their own vote to elect a particular individual from their constituency. They are not going to vote on every single decision that is going to be taken. Why? Because we are a very big country. We have a huge population. We cannot be coming together to decide upon every single aspect. So that is why we go for representative democracy, where we actually elect an individual from a particular region. Now this individual is going to be taking the decisions on our behalf. That is the assumption. Okay, so that is why this is the second thing, democratic. Now republic is basically that the head of the state will be elected. So this basically is the indication that the President of India, the head of the state, will also be an elected individual. That will not be an individual who actually takes this particular rank like the monarchy of Great Britain or England. So when you talk about England, so the crown of England, the British crown basically is the you can say the constitutional head or the head of the state of Great Britain. Okay, but the point being that when you talk about Great Britain, so this is something which basically passes on into generations. So that is a hereditary post. You cannot be electing a particular individual as the constitutional head of Great Britain. But in India, this is not the case. We do not have any hereditary right. Okay, all these offices are open, and subsequently in all of these offices there will be elections. Okay, now the mode of election may be different, but there will be elections. That is basically the situation that we have here. Sovereign democratic republic. Okay, so in order to ensure that we are a democratic setup, so we will be needing this particular thing, elections. And in order to get this particular election done, we will be needing a body to oversee elections. And this is exactly what we have with respect to the Election Commission of India. So I hope this is something which is clear. What exactly is the Election Commission of India? So Election Commission of India actually is established under Article 324 of the Constitution of India. Okay. So with respect to the Election Commission, what do we understand? So Election Commission of India basically is a body that is actually appointed by the President of India. So when you talk about Article 324, So it basically talks about the Election Commission of India's establishment, that there has to be a particular body with this particular name. Okay, then it basically tells you the responsibilities. So what exactly are going to be the responsibilities? So they have vested the responsibilities as elections to Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, which is basically called Parliament. Okay, then elections to legislature, state legislature. Okay, so that will include both legislative assembly and council. Then at the same time, they have also been vested with the power for elections to President of India and Vice President. Both of these elections are also conducted by the Election Commission of India. These things have been given under Article 324. Further, it has been said that there will be basically election commissioners. So the election commissioners will be appointed. Okay, they will be appointed by the President of India. Okay, now the President may appoint one member or multiple members, that depends upon the President. Okay, so composition is not fixed. So whatever number of election commissioners that the President may deem suitable at that particular time, the President may appoint. Okay, so it may be a single member body, it may be a multi-member body. So when the Election Commission of India was established in 1950, it was a single member body. Since 1989, it has been a multi-member body. Okay, so in case of multi-member body, in this particular case, what is going to happen? The first election commissioner will act as the chairperson and will be called Chief Election Commissioner. Chief Election Commissioner, that is just a designation. Okay, that's the whole thing, that the first one to be appointed to this particular body would be called the Chief Election Commissioner only if it is a multi-member body. Had it been a single member body, that is going to be the case, Election Commissioner of India. Okay, so when it is the Chief Election Commissioner, so this particular individual is going to act as the chairperson. Now decisions are majority based. Decisions are to be taken on majority. So when the decisions are to be taken in majority, this basically means that you would be needing an odd number of election commissioners. Had it been the case that there is an even number of election commissioners, there can always be a tie. But if there are odd number of election commissioners, 3, 5, 7, there will never be a tie. So that is why the decisions are taken on a majority basis. Okay, so this is basically the primary set of responsibilities with respect to conduct of election. But apart from this, the next set of responsibilities is also the preparation and management of the electoral rolls. That is what we have discussed. That is also given under Article 324. Okay, so that is why we see that Article 324 acts as the foundation of the Election Commission of India. Okay, so now when we talk about this, so it is basically Article 324 also talks about electoral rolls. Okay, so based upon that, we have just seen how exactly the electoral rolls are the one which are maintained and managed by the Election Commission of India. Okay, then at the same time it talks about the removal of Chief Election Commissioner and Election Commissioners. So Chief Election Commissioner is actually removed on the same grounds as the Supreme Court judge. Okay, But at the same time, when you talk about other election commissioners, they will be removed on the recommendation of Chief Election Commissioner. So this is also a difference, that when you talk about the removal of the election commissioners, so that is something which is not fixed. The Chief Election Commissioner will basically be removed on the grounds of the removal of a Supreme Court judge, but with respect to other election commissioners, on the recommendation of the Chief Election Commissioner. Okay. Then at the same time, it also talks about that terms of service, that basically is going to include the monthly emoluments, what will be the tenure of service in the election commission. This is something which will be decided by the president or will be given by an act of parliament. So it is basically either the parliament or the president which is going to decide upon what exactly are going to be the service conditions. Okay, so their salaries are not charged upon the Consolidated Fund of India. It will be decided by the parliament or for that matter the president of India. So this is basically all about the election commission that we need to know as of now. More details when we will be reading about it in the polity section. Now when we talk about the Representation of People Act 1950. So in 1950 we basically see the beginning of the Constitution of India on 26th of January 1950. So the first requirement of India becoming democratic is to hold an election. But in order to hold that particular election, we will also be needing to have an electoral roll. That is why this particular act is the one which came first. Okay. So when you talk about the Representation of People Act of 1950, it basically talks about the allocation of seats. Allocation of seats to Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha and legislature of the states. So legislature will include both legislative assembly as well as legislative council. It first of all talks about that. The second thing, it basically talks about the qualification of becoming a voter. So before you could be elected as an elected representative, you have to be registered as a voter. So what exactly are the qualifications of becoming a voter? What exactly are the disqualifications which are basically there with respect to the voters as well? What are the disqualifications? Okay, so with respect to the disqualifications, there are a few. The first one, not being a citizen of India. Unsound mind as declared by court. So the court basically finds that you do not have the right mental stability to be a voter. Okay. Then at the same time, you may also be barred by any law in operation. So basically, when a particular individual is imprisoned or is serving a sentence, at that particular time they are not supposed to be voting. Okay, so that is basically the disqualification. Apart from that, it also talks about something which is called as delimitation. Okay, so delimitation basically means how exactly the electoral boundaries or electoral constituencies will be made. So a mechanism of electoral constituencies is basically given in this particular act as well. What exactly would be the way in which the electoral constituencies are going to be drawn up, what exactly is going to be the principle, and subsequently how it will be implemented. Apart from that, it also gives about the hierarchy of officers. Hierarchy of officers to prepare electoral rolls. Okay, so electoral roll, it is all about making the electoral roll first. So that is why here you are going to get the post of electoral registration officer, booth level officer. These are basically going to be the ones which are going to be present here. Okay, so this is basically what we have with respect to the salient features of Representation of People Act 1950. So once you have become a voter, now comes the next part, that is Representation of People Act 1951. Now 1951 Act basically talks about how exactly an individual may become a member of the legislature. Okay, so this is basically talking about qualification and disqualification. I'm not going into details right now because that will make it a little more expansive for you. I'm just telling you the broader features. Okay, so qualification and disqualification from becoming a member of Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, Legislative Assembly or Legislative Council. Okay, that is the first thing that it talks about. Then at the same time it also talks about the way in which the registration of political parties is to be done. That is the next major feature. Okay, how exactly the political parties will be registered by the Election Commission of India. Now this particular power of registration has been given to the Election Commission of India. The next thing that is basically given here is basically because you are talking about elections, so there has to be some kind of electoral offences. Okay, that is basically like promoting enmity between the groups. That may be because of bribing people, that could be because of booth capturing. So these electoral offences have been defined. Okay, so these electoral offences actually become the grounds for disqualification. Okay, so they have been defined here. And then finally it talks about electoral disputes, that after an election has happened, how exactly the electoral disputes are to be managed. So because of this particular thing, electoral disputes with respect to MPs, that is Member of Parliament or Member of Legislative Assembly, are given to the High Court. Okay, so whatever is your electoral constituency, and with respect to this electoral constituency, whatever is the concerned High Court, under which jurisdiction it comes, so there you are going to have the objections raised. So this is basically the broad, you can say, features of the Representation of People Act 1951. I am not going into the details right now because you will become bored out of it. Okay, so when we'll be doing polity, we'll be talking about it in expansive and enormous details. Don't worry, this is something that we need to know as of now. Okay, now when you talk about the office of leader of opposition, so office of leader of opposition is a very important office with respect to any parliamentary democracy, basically any democracy where we have elected representatives. So one part actually rules rules or runs the government, the other part is basically the one which checks any kind of abuse or any kind of policies or any kind of limitations of that particular government. So that particular office is the office of leader of opposition. So for the first time this came into existence in 1969. This was the first time that this particular office got official recognition. Okay, this was the first time. Then subsequently what happened was that after this, the next thing that happened was that in 1977 it was basically recognized under law. This was recognized under the Salaries and Allowances Act. Of the leader of opposition. Okay, the leader of opposition is in short called LOP. So I am writing LOP 1977. Okay, so based on this particular thing, for the first time the office of leader of opposition was defined. Okay, so this is basically going to be what exactly is going to be the criteria for the office of leader of opposition. Basically, first thing, it is going to be the largest party in the opposition. The largest party in the opposition. The next thing, not just this, it should secure at least 10% of the seats in this house, in whatever house this particular office is going to be recognized, there you should be having at least 10% of the total strength of that particular house. Let us say that there are 50 seats in a particular house, so you need to have at least 5 seats. Okay, then you are going to be, when you match these two conditions, then you are actually eligible for the office of leader of opposition. If you do not have this, you cannot be the member of the leader of opposition. And this is precisely why between 2014 to 2023, in this particular time frame, 2024, okay, in this particular time frame, there was no leader of opposition in Lok Sabha. Why? Because there was no party in the opposition which secured even 55 seats to become eligible for this particular post. Okay, so that is why between this time there was no leader of opposition. In this particular election, okay, now the current Lok Sabha, we have the leader of opposition as a functional office. Okay, so what exactly are the perks and privileges? So leader of opposition basically is given equivalent rank and perks as that of a cabinet minister. Okay, so they have the same rank as that of the cabinet minister. So basically cabinet minister is a minister who is holding a key portfolio in the council of ministers. Okay, so they will have the same equivalence and same perks. At the same time, they have given the same order of precedence as the Chief Justice of India. Okay, then at the same time, the leader of opposition, at the same time, what is also given is that it is expected out of the leader of opposition to provide constructive feedback or constructive criticism. Constructive criticism to the government. Okay, so you have to check the government is not abusing its power and it is doing its job fine. At the same time, it is also the alternate leader of the government if opposition comes to power. So this is something which can happen if the existing government is the one which is going to either resign or it collapses due to a no confidence motion. Okay, so this is basically the situation with respect to the leader of opposition. So it's a very, very powerful office and it's a very important office because this is going to ensure that the government does not abuse its authority. Okay, so that's the leader of opposition for you. Now coming to these questions, consider the following statements about elections in India. All elections in India are based upon the principle of universal adult franchise. Article 326 of the Constitution of India provides 18 years as the minimum age of a citizen to register as voters. So you basically have to evaluate in this particular question if these two are factually correct. And if these two are factually correct, then you have to evaluate if the second statement correctly explains the first statement or not. Okay, so the first statement is all elections in India are based upon the principle of universal adult franchise. This is basically wrong. Okay, because if you talk about all the elections, you are also going to include the elections to the office of president and vice president. Now these are not based upon universal adult franchise. We all do not vote in these elections. We vote in the elections of Lok Sabha and we vote in the elections of for that matter Legislative Assembly and the Gram Panchayat or urban local bodies. We do not vote in the elections of Rajya Sabha or president or vice president. So all elections are not the ones which are based upon universal adult franchise. But yes, Article 326 does definitely provide currently that the age will be 18 years. The minimum age for registration as a voter is 18 years. So first statement is wrong, second is correct. Option D is the correct answer. Okay, going to the next question. The Election Commission of India is responsible for the conduct of elections Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, Legislative Assembly, Legislative Council, Gram Panchayat. I hope this is something which is a pretty simple question. You must have understood that Gram Panchayat elections are the one which I have not mentioned throughout this particular article. So this is the only one where they do not operate. All the rest four, they are the ones which are actually done by them. So the correct answer would be option C. With respect to Gram Panchayat, you have another body called the State Election Commission, which has been formed. So it is the State Election Commission which is given the responsibility for conducting elections to the local self-government, or for that matter the Panchayati Raj. Okay. So that is another nugget for you. Now the third question, consider the following statements about Election Commission of India. The Constitution provides for the Election Commission to be composed of 3 election commissioners. An election commissioner can be removed only on similar grounds as that of a Supreme Court judge. The expenditure of the Election Commission of India is charged upon the consolidated fund. How many of the above statements is or are correct? Okay, so we have to evaluate which of these are correct. So the first one is Constitution of India provides for Election Commission to be composed of 3 election commissioners. Wrong. The Constitution does not give us a number, okay, for the number of election commissioners which will compose or constitute the election commission. So that is wrong. The second one, an election commissioner can be removed only on similar grounds as that of a Supreme Court judge. Wrong. Election commissioner may, if it is only for chief election commissioner only, then this particular thing is valid. In general, election commissioners are removed on the recommendation of the chief election commissioner. So that's wrong. Expenditure of the Election Commission of India is charged upon the Consolidated Fund of India. Wrong. Their salaries are decided by the union government, and that is based upon the law passed by the parliament. So all the 3 are wrong. So how many of them are correct? Option D, none of them. Okay. So I hope this is something which is clear with you. Now we are going towards the next one, that is basically President's rule in Manipur. So see, Manipur basically is one of the northeastern states of India which has seen a lot of ethnic clashes since May of 2023. Okay. So what has happened is that this particular state was actually running with a government with you can say a suspended animation of the assembly, but on February 9th, okay, on February 9th 2024, we basically see the resignation the resignation of Chief Minister of Manipur. Okay. So with respect to this particular resignation, what has happened is that after this particular resignation, the Council of Ministers, which was right now forming the government, that is supposed to resign. Why? Because you were basically recommended by this Chief Minister. So what happened after this particular resignation? No suitable candidate was nominated. Okay. So because no suitable candidate was nominated, so now what is going to happen? That in this particular regard, what we are going to see that there is no government which is existing, and subsequently then because of this what happened was that President's rule was imposed. Okay. And now what has happened currently, what is exactly in the news? This particular President's rule has been extended for 6 months. Extended for 6 months. Okay. That is basically what is the situation here with respect to Manipur, and that is exactly what we are going to study. So when we talk about the President's rule in Manipur, so test your knowledge with respect to this particular question. You can pause now and you can read this question and answer it. Now this is the next question. Again, pause and answer. Now, why exactly is this particular article in news? Because the parliament has recently given the extension of the President's rule for the next 6 months to Manipur. Okay. And Manipur as of now is the state with the highest number of instances where the President's rule has been applied. 11 number of times throughout the history of independent India, we have Manipur seeing the you can say the rule of the President's rule. But the longest duration of President's rule is with Jammu and Kashmir. Okay, this is basically with Jammu and Kashmir, followed by Punjab in states. Okay, or you can say Puducherry if we consider you can say union territories as well. Okay, so this is basically what we are going to study. So when we talk about the President's rule, so President's rule first of all is nowhere mentioned in the Constitution. You will not find this particular thing mentioned in the Constitution of India. Neither this particular you can say a word, nor for that matter you will find state emergency. These are not mentioned in the Constitution of India, both of these terms. So when you talk about President's rule, this is something which has been derived from section 93. Section 93 of the Government of India Act. Okay, there was a basic, there was an act during the time of the British that was called the Government of India Act 1935, which was one of the most comprehensive of the legislations by the British to give a governance system to India. Okay, so based upon that, there was a particular section, section 93, which talked about certain emergencies and contingencies that have to be taken to ensure smooth running of the government. Okay, so President's rule basically is derived from that particular section. So when you talk about President's rule, in this particular scenario, what happens is that the President assumes all the powers of the state government. Assumes all executive power of the state government. Okay, the Parliament assumes all the legislative power of the state government, of the state. Okay, this is basically the most fundamental idea with respect to the President's rule. Okay, so when we talk about the President's rule, this is basically invoked under Article 356 of the Constitution, which is a part of the emergency provisions. Okay, that is basically what we have here, emergency provisions. Okay, so when we talk about this particular emergency provision, what we get to understand is that the emergency provisions are there in order to ensure that any kind of unforeseen circumstances can be dealt with easily. Okay, so that is why when we talk about the President's rule, it is basically under this particular article that we ensure that even if the state government is not able to function properly, it is the President who is going to take charge of the execution of the things, and the laws will be made by the Parliament, so that the law making or the government is not stopped in the state because of this particular scenario. So when we talk about the President's rule, there are certain you can say preconditions. Okay, with respect to Article 355 of the Constitution, it basically is giving a duty to the Union government, duty of the Union on two things. The first duty that it basically has is with respect to you can say protection of the states, protection of states from external aggression and internal disturbances. Okay, that's the first one. And the next one that we basically have is basically the next duty that is there is to ensure running of the government, running of state governments in accordance to the Constitution of India. Okay, so whatever are the provisions of the Constitution of India, whatever are their rightful powers and whatever has been given to them, based upon that you have to run this particular government. Okay, if either of these two things happen, if there is any internal disturbance, if there is any external aggression, or there is a failure on the state government to actually abide by the provisions of the Constitution of India while running its execution, then basically what happens is that this is something which is considered to be a breakdown of the constitutional machinery. So Article 356 basically talks about the satisfaction of the President of the breakdown of the constitutional machinery. Okay, so this breakdown of the constitutional machinery is something which is going to result into the you can say the discontinuance of the government, and this is something which is either recommended by the state governor or by any other reliable source. Okay, so in this particular regard, what is going to happen is that then it basically becomes lawful for the president to assume that there is a constitutional breakdown of the machinery, and subsequently the executive powers are now to be assumed by the president. Okay, so this results in assumption of powers. Okay, so with respect to powers, executive powers. So executive power basically goes to the president. Legislative power goes to the parliament. Okay, and this is basically done. This is the exception here would be high courts. High court's power are remaining untouched. There will be no transfer of power to the president or the parliament with respect to the high court. Okay, or for that matter the other court. So that is why this is something which will be done. How exactly will this be done? This will be done using a proclamation. Okay, a proclamation will be issued by the president about this particular scenario, that president's rule is going to be imposed. Okay, so when this is basically done, the proclamation is imposed. So within 2 months of the proclamation, this has to be approved by the parliament. Okay, or what is going to happen is that if the 2 months period expires, the president rule is going to be revoked. The second way, that the president may also, you can say, come up with another proclamation to counter this, to cancel this, that the president's rule will now be no more effective. Okay, and this can be extended. Article 356 of the Constitution, this is something which can be extended with parliamentary approval. This can be extended with parliamentary approval. Okay, so this can be extended to you can say by 6 months with parliamentary approval, but if it is to be extended beyond 1 year period, then there has to be valid grounds, and there are 2 valid grounds. One valid ground is that there is already an imposition of national emergency which is in operation right now, that there is external aggression, and that is why we are under a state of emergency. The second one is that the Election Commission of India has basically said that we will not be able to conduct elections because of the unfavorable situations. So in that particular regard, this thing can be extended up to a period of 3 years, not more than that. Okay, this extension can be taken up 6 months at a time for a period of 3 years, not more than that, and only in the situation that either you are under national emergency or for that matter you are under the you can say the Election Commission of India's inability to conduct the elections. Okay, so these are basically the situations which are given under Article 356 of the Constitution with respect to the imposition of the president's rule. So approval and renewal, this is basically done by parliament. Both the houses of the parliament are supposed to be doing this. Okay, so this is purely a parliamentary procedure, nothing else. Now, when we talk about Article 365 of the Constitution of India, so Article 365 of the Constitution of India says that the states have to abide by the directions that are given by the center or the union government to them. If the states do not agree or they do not implement the orders that have come from the center, okay, at that particular time, again it will be a violation of the Constitution. And subsequently, under Article 365, because there has been an insubordination, that the state governments have not they have not stuck to the orders or they have not implemented the orders sent to them by the state by the central government, then that is another ground for the imposition of president's rule. Okay, so these are basically the grounds for the imposition of the president's rule. Okay, so this is basically the question that was there. Consider the following statements about the President of India. The term president's rule is not mentioned in the Constitution. Article 356 of the Constitution provides for the imposition of this proclamation in a state. Okay, So the first statement here is right, that the constitution does not mention this particular term, and article 356 of the constitution provides for the imposition of this particular proclamation in a state. They are also correct. So the correct answer here would be both 1 and 2. Okay. The next one, consider the following statements about the President's rule with respect to the Constitution of India. The President's rule can be imposed indefinitely subject to parliamentary approval every 6 months. The budget of the state is passed by the Parliament of India during this period. Imposition of President's rule is open to judicial review. Which of the statements above is or are correct? So, President's rule can be imposed indefinitely subject to Parliament's approval every 6 months. This is not correct. It cannot be imposed indefinitely. Okay, at the most 3 years. Okay, budget of a state is passed by the Parliament during this period. This is correct because the Parliament is assuming the legislative powers. Now, imposition of the President's rule is open to judicial review. This is something which has been said by the Supreme Court in the SR Bommai case. Okay, so this is something which has been said under the SR Bommai case, where the Supreme Court said that the President's imposition of the proclamation of the President's rule can actually be tried for malified intent, lack of right facts, or abuse of power with respect to you can say the exercise of power. Okay, so that is why this is open to judicial review. So the correct answer here would be option C, 2 and 3. Okay, so with this we finish this particular session. I hope you understood what exactly were the things with respect to you can say the Representation of People Act, and what exactly are the things with respect to the President of India. If there are any doubts, please let me know, and please comment what exactly is your feedback so that we can improve and subsequently we can give you better quality content for yourself. So till next time, thank you, all the very best.